In the beginning of the film, we see a cabin that is sealed, and a blue car is parked in front of it. A teenager named Ronnie breaks the glass, climbs out of the window, and starts running. A witch is following Ronnie, and while running, Ronnie unknowingly drops a pistol from his bag. As he enters the forest, Ronnie realizes he is hiding but notices that his pistol has fallen. We also see that Ronnie has some silver bullets in his bag. Suddenly, the witch attacks Ronnie. In the next scene, we see the police finding Ronnie on the road. Ronnie is standing in the middle, which means he survived the witch's attack, but he looks like a living corpse. This clearly shows that the witch has taken part of Ronnie's soul. This is where the movie's intro ends. After the intro, the story begins in 1997 at Martha's Vineyard. We see the blue car arriving in the town, and the scene shifts to a boy named Noah, who is writing something on a typewriter at his house. We also meet Noah's mom, Abby, and a paying guest who has come to stay with them for the summer. Her name is Mrs. Hovers, and she arrived on a bicycle, parking her car elsewhere. Back to Noah, we understand that he is writing something like an editorial for the newspaper, involving conspiracy theories. The editor of the newspaper tells Noah that he cannot print such bogus things because the town attracts tourists in the summer who prefer light-hearted content. From this conversation, we also learn that Noah's father was a journalist, but he has been missing for many years, most likely no longer alive. Next, we meet Noah's friends, Ben, Eugene, and Sammy. One day, after a baseball game, Noah and his friends are walking home when they pass by a house. They start talking about how an old man lives there who supposedly killed his entire family and buried them in his garden. These are just rumors, but Noah believes them and wants to prove it so his story can be published on the front page. Despite his friends' reluctance, Noah convinces them to go with him to the old man's property to investigate. But the old man sees them and the kids run away, screaming. In the process, Noah leaves his bag behind on the property. That night, Noah's best friend, Ben, comes to his house and they talk. We learn that Ben plans to go swimming with his girlfriend, Ellie, near the jumping bridge later that night. Ben gives Noah a baseball cap and tickets to a baseball game. Next, we see Ben and Ellie going swimming. However, the witch from the first scene appears and pulls Ben into the water. Ellie manages to swim away, but Ben cannot escape. The witch drains Ben's soul, similar to what happened to Ronnie earlier. The next day, when Noah goes to Ben's house, he sees the police there. Upon investigating, Noah learns that Ben returned home safely the previous night, but now he is like a living corpse, just like Ronnie. Ben can neither speak properly nor listen to anyone, and it's clear that something terrible has happened to him. Seeing all this, Noah goes to meet Ellie, and she tells him everything about the previous night. Noah is shocked and immediately goes to the jumping bridge. There he finds a black cloth. While at the spot, Noah sees Mrs. Hovers, who waves at him, and he waves back. After that, Noah decides to visit the old man's house, where he had left his bag earlier. The old man had returned Noah's bag to his house, so Noah thanks him. We learn that the man's name is Gene, and he is a retired detective. The rumors the kids had spread about dead bodies in Gene's yard were false. Noah tells Gene about what happened with Ben and asks for his help in solving the case. However, Gene doesn't believe in witches, so he refuses to help. That night, when Noah takes food to Mrs. Hovers' door, he hears her chanting in Latin, and this makes Noah suspect that she might be the witch. Meanwhile, Gene watches the news about Ben and finally decides to help Noah. The next day, Gene meets Noah, and they both go to check on Ben. Gene doesn't find any injuries or marks on Ben's body, so he thinks the kids might be making up the story about the witch. Afterward, Noah brings Gene to meet Sammy and Eugene. Even though Gene doesn't believe in witches, he starts to think there could be a kidnapper in town who is targeting children, including Gene's own child. We learn that there's a tragic backstory behind this, which will be revealed later. The scene then shifts to a man named Frank, who was camping. A beautiful girl lures Frank into the woods, but we soon realize that this girl is actually a witch, and Frank is her next victim. There are mines planted in the forest, and as the witch takes Frank's soul, A mine explodes. The next day, the news reports about Frank, who is found in the same condition as Ben, numb and lifeless. After seeing this, Noah and Jean go to the site of the explosion. A large crater has formed, and Noah finds another piece of black cloth. He also sees a broken broom, and this convinces both Noah and Jean that a witch might be responsible. Noah, Jean, and his friends come together and make a plan to catch the witch. Jean explains that traditional witches used to eat children to stay young, wore black clothes, and flew on brooms. But this witch, instead of eating children, takes their souls, which is why the children become like living dead. Jean believes this soul-sucking technique might be something new, and the witch's first victim could have been Ronnie. If children disappear, people would notice, but if they just turn numb, their parents might think they are sick. That night, Noah goes to Mrs. Hover's room and finds similar black clothes there, confirming his suspicion. In Mrs. Hover's room, Noah finds children's drawings and names, making him even more suspicious. Now, it really seems like Mrs. Hovers is the witch. The next day, when she leaves on her bicycle, Noah and his friends decide to follow her. She heads to the backstage of an auditorium, and Noah follows closely. There, he sees Mrs. Hovers chasing a child. Seeing this, Noah tackles her, and his friends start sprinkling holy water on her, thinking it would stop her. But nothing happens. Mrs. Hovers becomes angry and starts yelling at them, asking what's going on. The kids explain that they believe she's a witch, but Mrs. Hovers clarifies that she's actually a children's fiction author. She was at the auditorium to promote her book. The Latin chanting they heard was just part of her prayer, and the children's drawings were references for her illustrations. The kids realize they've made a huge mistake. Mrs. Hovers is not a witch. Furious, she leaves the boarding house where she was staying, and this leaves Noah's mother upset. Noah also feels terrible and goes to Jean's house. During their conversation, Jean shares his tragic past. Years ago, when Jean's child was just 5 years old, they went on a trip together. While Jean was changing a tire after it burst, a man on a motorcycle kidnapped his child. It's been over 30 years, and Jean never found his child. This incident also caused his wife to leave him. Perhaps this is why Jean is helping the kids now. He misses his own child. Jean then shares his research board with Noah, showing that children have been disappearing in the town for years. Together, they decide they must warn the townspeople and find the witch. They head to the editor's office to seek help. Their plan is to publish a notice in the newspaper to make people aware. Meanwhile, the witch is roaming the town in her blue car, targeting another little girl. She consumes the girl's soul and leaves. Back with Noah and Jean, they reach the editor's office, where they meet an inspector. Noah explains everything to them, but the editor refuses to publish the story, and both the editor and inspector don't believe Noah's claims. Jean steps in, calming the situation, and tells them that Noah is just a kid and that the story is probably made up. However, Jean suggests that the children in the town might still be in danger from other criminals, so they shouldn't print the notice just yet. Hearing this, Noah becomes furious and storms out. Outside, he meets his friends Eugene and Sammy. He asks if they will still support him, but they refuse. They explain that their parents told them to stay away from Noah and that he's obsessed with becoming a writer or journalist, so he's creating fake stories to get attention. Feeling deeply hurt, Noah goes to the beach. In frustration, he tears up all his research papers and throws them away. The next day, Noah visits the baseball field and notices that Ben is no longer playing like he used to. At the baseball field, Noah notices that Ben is unable to hit any shots and just stands there, completely numb. That evening, as Eugene is heading home, the witch follows him in her blue car. Terrified, Eugene runs away, and soon after, Noah finds Eugene's bicycle lying on the ground. Suspecting that the witch may have taken Eugene, Noah immediately follows the footprints into the forest. There he finds Eugene, scared but unharmed. Suddenly, a witch in a black hood appears before them, taunting Noah for interfering with her plans. Both kids run away in fear. When they reach the road, Eugene pushes Noah down, blaming him for all the trouble. Eugene leaves Noah behind. As Noah gets up, he notices something strange: a small amount of red algae stuck to his shoes. This algae was only found in the area where they had just escaped from the witch. Noah heads home but realizes the witch is following him again. He runs to Gene's house and tells him everything. Gene apologizes for doubting Noah earlier and shows him all of his research. Gene reveals that he has found a missing child who was later discovered in the same condition as Ben, unresponsive and lifeless. Turns out that this boy is Ronnie, the same kid we saw at the beginning of the movie. Gene decides to visit Ronnie's house, which is in another town. Meanwhile, Noah goes home, and his mother shows him some of his father's belongings. She comforts Noah, telling him that he will become a great journalist just like his father. They share an emotional moment, and it becomes clear that Noah's father died while working abroad. Later that night, the witch attacks Gene. The TV in his house suddenly turns on, playing a video where Gene's son asks him why he didn't save him. Overcome with emotion, Gene breaks down in tears. Afterward, the witch visits Noah's house, terrifying him. She turns off the lights in his room and types a poem on his typewriter. The poem describes how she consumes children's souls and warns that Noah is next. The next day, Gene visits Ronnie's house, where Ronnie remains quiet and unresponsive. Gene begins searching for clues in Ronnie's room. He finds the same bag Ronnie was carrying at the start of the movie. Inside the bag, Gene discovers a box filled with research materials that Ronnie had collected, including silver bullets. Gene realizes that Ronnie knew who the witch was and had tried to kill her, but she caught him and drained his soul. As Gene heads home, something clicks in his mind. While looking through Ronnie's research, Gene notices that all the kids who became victims of the witch were on their city's baseball teams, and the umpire for all those games was the same person. That's when it hits him: the witch is actually the umpire. At the same time, Noah is playing in his baseball game. When he steps up to bat, he looks at the umpire's shoes and sees the same red algae that had been on his own shoes. Noah notices burn marks on the umpire's hand, which clearly proves that the umpire was involved in the mine blast. The red algae Noah found earlier, and these burn marks confirm that the witch has been disguising herself as the umpire and preying on children. After the baseball game, Noah convinces Eugene and Sammy to join him in going to the umpire's house. When they arrive, they find many children's belongings like ID cards and bags, proving that the umpire is the witch. Sammy starts recording everything when suddenly, the umpire arrives and attacks them, knocking them unconscious. When the kids wake up, they realize they've been tied up by the umpire. The witch, now in her true form, tells them that she didn't want to kill them at first. She had grown tired of eating children and found a new way to feed on their souls. However, since the 3 kids came to her house willingly, she now plans to make soup out of them. The witch starts dragging Noah away, but Eugene and Sammy manage to free themselves with the help of a lighter. As they try to rescue Noah, a fire starts spreading, weakening the witch. The kids fight back, but the witch is still too powerful. Just as she is about to kill them, Gene arrives and shoots the witch with a silver bullet, the same bullet he found in Ronnie's bag. The silver bullet has a strong effect on the witch. A glowing thread of light starts coming out of her body, which she tries to pull back into herself. Gene realizes that the glowing thread is actually the souls of the children the witch had consumed. If they kill the witch with more silver bullets, the children might get their souls back and return to normal. Noah and Gene continue to fight the witch. In the final battle, the witch grabs Noah and begins to drain his soul, but Gene fires another shot, hitting the witch hard. All the trapped souls pour out of her, and the witch is completely destroyed. As the witch dies, the souls return to the children, and they all wake up, including Ben. The house catches fire, and all the evidence and cameras are burned. This means that Noah and Gene won't be able to prove the existence of the witch or write about what happened. Despite not being able to publish a story about the witch, Noah writes an article about Gene instead. He shares how Gene served his country and clears up all the rumors that surrounded him. The editor is impressed and agrees to publish the story. In the end, Noah visits Gene, who is preparing to meet his wife after many years. Ben, now fully recovered, starts playing baseball again like before. The last scene shows Gene driving, on his way to reunite with his wife. The movie ends here. So, friends, that was the story of the movie. It was simple but enjoyable, with the kids, the witch, and the battle to save the town from a dark evil.